The breaking point. When everything falls apart, there comes a point in every life when the weight becomes too much to bear, when the structures we've built to define ourselves begin to crumble. The job title that once gave us pride, the relationships that once gave us warmth, the beliefs that once gave us certainty. One by one, they begin to fall away until all that's left is the raw, trembling awareness of being naked, uncertain, and painfully alive. It is in this moment, when everything collapses, that something dangerous and sacred awakens. Because the truth is, no one is truly free while they still have something to lose. We are raised in a world that conditions us to cling to possessions, to identity, to validation. From childhood, we're told that success is safety, that comfort is happiness, that being liked means being right. And so we spend our lives building walls made of expectations. We measure our worth through things that can be taken from us. We believe that to lose them is to lose ourselves. But eventually, life tests the structure. The cracks begin to show: a failure, a betrayal, a death. An empty moment in the mirror when the reflection no longer feels familiar. The system that once promised meaning suddenly feels hollow. You realize the things you fought to keep, status, approval, love, were never really yours to begin with. They belonged to the game, not to you. This is the breaking point, not the end, but the violent beginning of awakening. Nietzsche called it staring into the abyss. Dostoevsky described it through his man underground, the one who, having lost faith in everything, sees the world for what it is, a theater of illusions. Viktor Frankl found it in the horror of the camps, discovering that even when stripped of everything, a person still retains the freedom to choose their inner stance toward life. At first, this realization feels like death. When the illusions fall away, what remains is terrifying in its emptiness. There is no structure to hide behind, no promise of safety, no external voice to tell you who you are. It's pure psychological zero. The moment the ego dissolves and all masks are burned. Most people never allow themselves to reach that depth. Society trains us to avoid it at all costs, to numb the pain, to distract ourselves, to keep moving, because if a person ever truly saw how fragile their identity was, the entire machinery of control would begin to tremble. A human being who has nothing left to lose can no longer be bought with comfort or controlled by fear. They become unpredictable, ungovernable, and profoundly alive. This is why every story of liberation begins with destruction. The loss of illusion is not punishment, it's purification. It's the tearing down of false walls so that something real can finally stand in their place. Those who have been through such collapse know that what dies is not the self, but the lie of the self. The story we've been told about who we must be. What emerges from the ashes is something quieter, simpler, and infinitely stronger. It is the kind of freedom that terrifies the world because it cannot be manipulated. When a man no longer fears loss, he is beyond the reach of control. When he no longer needs to be liked, he becomes honest. When he no longer clings to what can be taken, he becomes untouchable. The breaking point, then, is not a tragedy. It's a rebirth, the dangerous, luminous moment when a human being becomes free in the only way that truly matters, by no longer belonging to the illusions that once owned him. The illusion of safety, how society tames the human spirit. Freedom, in its purest form, is terrifying, not only to the individual but to the system that seeks to contain them. Civilization, in all its layers of sophistication, is built on the subtle art of domestication. From the moment we are born, we are conditioned to trade liberty for comfort, autonomy for predictability, and courage for conformity. Safety, it turns out, is not just a necessity. It is a tool, the most effective tool for taming the human spirit. Consider the structure of modern life. Jobs promise security but demand compliance. Education teaches obedience under the guise of knowledge. Media delivers entertainment and distraction, gently molding desires, shaping fears, and defining what is normal. In this environment, comfort becomes the invisible leash. The system does not need to imprison people with bars. It seduces them into self-imprisonment, convincing them that their chains are freedom itself. This strategy is far from new. The Romans perfected it with bread and circuses, providing enough pleasure to keep the populace distracted and docile, while power remained concentrated in the hands of the few. Fast forward to the modern era. Consumer culture, social media, and algorithmic feeds have refined this principle to a frightening degree. Happiness is packaged and sold. Identity is constructed through consumption, and critical thought, the ultimate threat to control, is slowly numbed under an endless barrage of convenience, entertainment, and approval. Philosophers like Erich Fromm have long warned that freedom can be as threatening as oppression. In Escape from Freedom, he argues that humans instinctively flee the responsibility that true autonomy demands. Most will gladly surrender their independence to a higher authority, a comforting routine, or the predictable rhythm of societal expectation, because the void of unstructured freedom is daunting. The system relies on this fear. It counts on our desire to avoid uncertainty, to cling to rules, to obey norms. Yet there exists a radical exception, the individual who has nothing left to lose. They have already faced the void. They have seen life stripped to its barest form and survived. Whereas most are tethered by fear of loss, these people walk untethered, unafraid of consequence, untouchable by the levers that move ordinary lives. They are dangerous precisely because the mechanisms designed to control them, comfort, validation, societal approval, no longer hold sway. History provides glimpses of this phenomenon. Revolutionary thinkers, mystics, and iconoclasts often emerge from personal collapse. Socrates drank hemlock in defiance of civic authority. Mystics renounced material wealth to embrace truth. Artists like Van Gogh poured suffering into creation, unconcerned with acclaim or recognition. In each case, freedom arose not from comfort or preparation, but from destruction, from loss, from the unshackling of fear. In modern society, the machinery of domestication has grown subtler, but no less potent. The average person is meticulously shepherded through life, their anxieties manipulated, their desires curated, their attention captured. Safety becomes a cage. Risk is vilified. Compliance is praised. The human spirit is quieted before it ever has the chance to roar. And yet, for those who have already experienced loss, the rules of the game no longer apply. They move through through the world unbound by the invisible chains that govern everyone else. They are immune to the comforts designed to seduce and control because they have already felt the abyss and found that they can stand within it. This section is a warning and also an insight. Comfort is not neutral and safety is not benign. They are tools wielded by those who wish to shape thought and behavior, to quiet dissent and foster dependence. Most willingly submit, never realizing that by surrendering to comfort, they have surrendered their freedom. But those who have nothing left to lose are a different story. They have already stripped themselves of all pretense, all attachment, all external validation. They are free, unpredictable, and uncontrollable. The system fears them because they operate outside its rules, beyond its reach, and so the stage is set. We now understand the danger that arises not from rebellion alone, but from the liberation born of loss. The human spirit, once unshackled from fear and comfort, becomes a force impossible to govern, impossible to tame, a quiet revolution waiting to unfold. The psychology of desperation. When fear dies, power emerges. Desperation is often viewed as a curse, a state of weakness, a final surrender to circumstance. But in truth, it is one of the most potent catalysts for transformation. When a person reaches the bottom, when all safety nets vanish, all identities collapse, and all illusions dissolve, something remarkable happens. Fear, the primary force that governs human behavior, loses its grip, and with fear removed, power quietly awakens. At the core of this transformation lies the human psyche. Carl Jung described it as confronting the shadow, the hidden, repressed, and often terrifying aspects of the self. Most avoid this confrontation, clinging to social masks and routines to suppress inner chaos. But when all external anchors disappear, the shadow rises to the surface. It demands recognition. The desperate mind must reconcile with itself or fracture entirely. This confrontation, painful as it is the doorway to authenticity and freedom. Nietzsche captured a similar truth with his concept of amor fati, the love of one's fate. To embrace life fully, he argued, one must accept not only its joys but also its suffering, chaos, and absurdity. Desperation strips life down to these essentials, forcing an individual to confront reality unflinchingly. In this state, illusions of control, certainty, and entitlement are destroyed, leaving only the raw, undiluted self. Psychologically, the process is equally transformative. Fear governs most human behavior, from conformity to obedience to self-sabotage. When fear of loss, failure, or social rejection disappears, so does the invisible cage it constructs. A person who has truly lost everything becomes unshackled, willing to take risks, speak truths, and act with radical clarity. Their decisions are no longer constrained by ego, by reputation, or by external validation. In essence, they gain a freedom that the comfortable and cautious can never know. History offers countless examples of this alchemy of desperation. Malcolm X, for instance, emerged from the despair of imprisonment and systemic oppression to become a voice that challenged the entire status quo. Van Gogh, rejected, isolated, and tormented, transformed personal suffering into works of enduring brilliance. Kafka wrote entire worlds from the perspective of the alienated and desperate. In each case, Loss did not destroy them, it unleashed them. Yet this power is not brute or violent by necessity. It is the subtle mastery of self, the ability to act without attachment, to endure without complaint, and to move through the world unbound by fear. The desperate individual is no longer a pawn in society's game. They operate outside its rules. They are dangerous not because they seek to harm, but because they have become impossible to manipulate, impossible to predict, and impossible to contain. Desperation also sharpens perception. When all distractions are stripped away, one sees the world with unflinching clarity. The illusions that cloud ordinary judgment, social expectation, cultural norms, hierarchical authority lose their influence. Decisions are made based on truth, not comfort. Actions are taken based on necessity, not convenience. Life becomes an intense, razor-edged focus. This is the paradox. The very state most fear, having nothing left to lose, is the state that produces the truest form of human power. While the majority retreat, paralyzed by loss or anxiety, the individual who embraces desperation becomes an agent of authenticity. They are free because fear no longer dictates their choices. They are empowered because the stakes that once constrained them have vanished. In the end, the psychology of desperation reveals a profound truth. Power is not found in accumulation, security, or influence. It is found in the absence of fear, in the confrontation with nothingness, and in the courage to act when the world offers no guarantees. When fear dies, clarity emerges. When clarity emerges, so does freedom, and in freedom the human spirit becomes unstoppable. Society's fear of the free individual. A human being who has nothing left to lose is, in essence, untouchable. They operate outside the systems that govern ordinary life, free from expectation, immune to manipulation, and unbound by fear. And this freedom, as exhilarating as it is for the individual, has always been feared by society, because a person who cannot be controlled is the greatest threat to every structure of power. Throughout history, civilizations have attempted to neutralize those who embody true freedom. Socrates drank hemlock rather than betray his pursuit of truth. Mystics were exiled or burned for refusing to bend to religious orthodoxy. Whistleblowers and dissidents have been silenced, ridiculed, or destroyed for daring to speak truths that disrupt collective complacency. The pattern is consistent. Society punishes those who refuse to conform, those who cannot be managed, and those who threaten the status quo simply by existing as independent agents of thought. Modern systems are far subtler, but no less effective. Social media algorithms, public shaming, cancel culture, and targeted disinformation work together to create a digital environment where conformity is rewarded and deviation is punished. The free individual, the one who rejects safety, challenges authority, or refuses to play the expected social game, becomes an anomaly, a source of discomfort and fear for the collective. By exposing the fragility of societal structures, they force others to confront their own dependency on rules, norms, and illusions. Philosophers have long analyzed this dynamic. Michel Foucault explored how power operates invisibly, disciplining thought and behavior without the need for overt violence. Hannah Arendt examined the psychology of totalitarian control, demonstrating how fear and obedience maintain dominance over populations. Both highlight the same essential truth. The structures of society rely on compliance, predictability, and the suppression of independent thought. A free individual destabilizes this delicate equilibrium equilibrium simply by refusing to submit. This fear is not abstract. It manifests in systematic ways. Labels such as crazy, antisocial, or dangerous are applied to those who act outside norms, effectively isolating them from society. Public ridicule, legal persecution, and social ostracism serve as mechanisms to reinforce conformity. Even acts of minor rebellion, questioning a narrative, refusing to participate in consumer culture, or rejecting authority can provoke disproportionate backlash. Society seeks to remind the free individual that the game still exists and that deviation carries consequences. Yet the truly liberated are immune to these pressures. They have already faced the abyss, already confronted loss, and already stripped themselves of external validation. The insults, judgments, and punishments that bind most people hold no sway over them. They operate with an almost alien autonomy, a quiet, uncompromising agency that frightens those still tethered by fear and expectation. This fear society feels is not irrational. It arises from the understanding that the presence of someone who cannot be controlled exposes the fragility of the entire system. Every act of independence is a mirror, reflecting back the illusion of safety, the fragility of comfort, and the artificiality of rules. The free individual is a living testament to the possibility that life can exist outside the machinery of control, and that the majority's compliance is not inevitable. The dangerous paradox is clear. While society punishes the free individual, it simultaneously needs them. They are proof of human potential, the spark that can inspire change, and the reminder that liberation is attainable. And yet for those in power, they are a threat, a living anomaly that cannot be normalized, tamed, or predicted. Ultimately, society's fear of the free individual underscores a profound truth. Freedom is dangerous, not because it harms, but because it challenges. It exposes weakness, fragility, and dependency. It shatters the illusions that govern collective life, and it reminds us that the structures we take for granted are maintained not by righteousness or order, but by fear. The rebirth. When you stop playing the game, there comes a moment after collapse when the noise stops. The endless chasing, the striving, the seeking for validation, all of it loses meaning. The person who has reached absolute zero, who has faced despair and survived, discovers that the rules of the game no longer apply. There is nothing left to protect, nothing left to gain, and nothing left to fear. In this space, a profound transformation occurs, the rebirth of the self. This is not a rebirth marked by external accolades or material success. It is internal, psychological, and profoundly liberating. The individual begins to inhabit life without compromise, without the filters of expectation. They speak truths without concern for approval. They act without seeking permission. They move through the world unburdened by the shackles that once dictated thought, behavior, and emotion. Stoic philosophy provides a lens for understanding this transformation. Epictetus wrote that external events cannot disturb a person unless they allow it. Freedom exists in mastering the self, not in controlling the world. Marcus Aurelius emphasized that life is not about clinging to fleeting comforts, but about aligning one's will with the realities of existence. The person who has lost everything lives these truths instinctively because they have already experienced the impermanence and fragility of all external attachments. Buddhist teachings echo this realization. Detachment is not indifference, it is clarity. It is seeing life as it is, without the distortion of desire or fear. The reborn individual experiences the same world as everyone else, but without being manipulated by its illusions. They operate from a place of inner authority, responding to reality with precision, authenticity, and courage. Psychologically, this rebirth is both subtle and profound. The ego, once inflated by identity and validation, has been tempered by loss. The person becomes resilient, adaptable, and grounded. Decisions are made with honesty and clarity, rather than obligation or fear. Life becomes simpler, sharper, and more intense, each moment experienced fully, each choice deliberate. This stage also brings the recognition that freedom is not passive. It is an active engagement with existence, a conscious refusal to participate in games that serve only illusion. To stop playing the game is not laziness or nihilism, it is defiance and clarity combined. It is understanding that most of what society values is irrelevant to true human flourishing. It is the courage to construct a life guided by principles, intuition, and inner truth rather than external expectation. The reborn individual often appears strange or alien to others. Their indifference to approval, their courage to act authentically, and their immunity to fear challenges the assumptions of those still playing the game. But this is precisely the point. Liberation is inherently isolating because it cannot coexist fully with dependency. Freedom is rare because it demands total honesty with oneself and with the world. Yet this isolation is not loneliness. It is a solitude that empowers. In the absence of external control, the individual discovers self-reliance, creativity, and presence. The rebirth is a reclamation of agency, the ability to define one's life, to act without compromise, and to pursue authenticity relentlessly. Ultimately, this stage marks the transformation from victim to agent, from constrained to liberated, from reactive to sovereign. The person who has stopped playing the game is no longer a participant in the illusion that governs the majority. They have become a force in their own right, unpredictable, self-directed, and profoundly alive. This is the quiet revolution of the human spirit, the recognition that liberation is not something to be earned or granted, but something that emerges naturally when the illusions fall away and the individual stops pretending to belong. In this stillness, the dangerous and luminous freedom of having nothing left to lose is fully realized. The dangerous beauty of true freedom, once attained, is a paradox. It is beautiful in its clarity, terrifying in its unpredictability, and dangerous in its very existence. The individual who has nothing left to lose has stepped beyond the rules, beyond fear, and beyond the reach of societal control. They have discovered a truth that few ever encounter. The world cannot dictate their inner life because it no longer holds anything they value. This dangerous beauty lies in its purity. When one is no longer bound by external approval, by possessions, by status, or by fear, the mind becomes unshackled. Decisions are made from truth, not convenience. Actions arise from necessity, not obligation. And life is lived with a precision and intensity that ordinary existence cannot contain. The world is no longer a stage for performance. It becomes a landscape for authentic action. Yet freedom is never comfortable. It is not passive or static. It is an active engagement with life's rawest realities. To be truly free is to carry the responsibility of choice without the comfort of certainty. Every action, every decision, every thought becomes consequential because there is no safety net to catch failure, no external structure to absorb disappointment. This intensity, while exhilarating, also carries danger. The liberated are unpredictable, untethered, and sometimes misunderstood. They challenge norms simply by existing, and they force others to confront their own dependence on illusion. Philosophically, this state resonates with the ideas of Nietzsche, who saw the highest form of human existence as the creation of one's own values in a world without guarantees. It echoes Viktor Frankl's insight that even in the most extreme loss, the human spirit retains the power to choose its stance, and it aligns with the Stoic understanding that freedom is found not in external circumstance, but in the mastery of oneself. This freedom is dangerous because it cannot be contained, it cannot be legislated, controlled, or silenced. The liberated individual is a living challenge to every structure that relies on fear, obedience, and dependence. They demonstrate that life outside the rules is possible, that the illusions of safety and necessity are just that, illusions, and their existence reminds the rest of society that dependence is a choice, not a necessity. At the same time, this freedom is beautiful. It allows life to be experienced in its fullest intensity. Every sensation, every thought, every encounter becomes vivid and profound because it is no longer filtered through fear or desire for approval. Joy and suffering alike are felt more deeply, not as burdens, but as raw expressions of existence. The liberated individual moves through the world with presence, with clarity, and with a quiet confidence that comes from knowing that nothing external can touch their essence. The danger and beauty coexist. They are two sides of the same coin. Freedom cannot be soft because softness is vulnerability. It cannot be comfortable because comfort is control. And it cannot be tamed because it is born from the refusal to yield. The individual who has nothing left to lose embodies this paradox fully, terrifying to the world, radiant to themselves, and unstoppable in their capacity for authentic action. In the end, the dangerous freedom of having nothing left to lose is a revelation. It is proof that the human spirit can transcend fear, that life can be lived on one's own terms, and that true liberation is always found at the edge of despair. Those who reach this state are no longer defined by what they have lost, but by the unshakable power that emerges when all illusions fall away. It is a freedom that cannot be taught, bought, or granted. It can only be experienced, and in that experience both the danger and the beauty of existence are revealed in their fullest, most profound form.